Thank you, Declan, and thank you for inviting me here today. It's always great to come to an event like this, meet new people, meet interesting people from different backgrounds. I've always learned a lot, so thank you for that. So my job is to try to keep your attention alert after that lovely lunch. So if you remain awake, I've done a good job. And what I want to talk about is digital transformation, as Declan said, but digital transformation is quite a buzzword in the industry. Most of you probably have heard of it, but it's come to mean different things to different people. And in many ways, digital transformation gets attached to almost any IT project these days, because digital transformation is, generally speaking, a goal of any CIO. It'll be one of their top 5 goals for the year, and they're expected to return money to the bottom line, so they'll find something to fill digital transformation. I work for Nitro, and for Nitro we try to help companies with their digital transformation, but we take a different approach. I want to talk about our bottoms-up digital transformation approach and what that means and why it's different. So Declan did a very nice introduction about me, so I won't talk much. So I'm at Nitro today. Before Nitro, I worked for Microsoft in Dublin and in Seattle. I worked in their international teams, building various products, and I did some industry standards work. For Nitro, we do have a global footprint, and that's important to us. So we've got offices in Dublin, London, Melbourne, and San Francisco. And we do localize into a couple of languages. Why this matters for us is that our customers are worldwide, and so we need to understand what's important to our customers. We're serving a worldwide audience, and their customers are worldwide as well. So we need to think through this as we're delivering products to our customers, how they're going to be used, how they're going to be deployed, what it means to be an end user at different parts of the world for our customers. So where I'd like to start is back in the 70s. Business Week put out an article in 1975 predicting that the office of the future would see a reduction of paper usage and electronic documentation would be widely used by the 1990s. I think we'd agree that didn't quite come to pass. Paper is still prevalent, if not more so now than it was back then. But it goes to show that digital transformation is not a new idea. It's been around forever, and it's been assumed we'd get there. Yet we still haven't. This is still a problem in almost every office in the world. Okay, missing something. What I like to think about as a definition of digital transformation is this. I just focus on the bit in bold. The bit that really matters here is that it's continuously creating and exploiting digital assets. So it literally means non-analog, things that are not paper. They're digitally created and they're digitally exploited or maintained. And once you have that in mind, it opens up a lot of other possibilities for you. So digital transformation today lives, generally speaking, at the CIO office. So it's usually a top-down, IT-focused initiative. And there's some benefits to that, but there's a lot of limitations. Some of the limitations are that the CIO only has so much resources in his office or her office. They have limited availability to focus on different aspects. And so as a result, if you look at the landscape today, we find that 3 in 10 employees, only 3 in 10 feel they have the tools to do their jobs. So despite the focus on digital transformation, employees still don't feel they have adequate tools to get their job done. 66% of organizations don't see positive outcomes of digital transformation. So whatever is going wrong, digital transformation is quite removed from the everyday of many people at organizations. Of documents, 65% of them remain analog. So you think about the problem that can create, not just now, but into the future. Every time you have a paper workflow, you sign a piece of paper, that has to be filed, that has to be archived, that has to be secured. Eventually, maybe that has to be securely destroyed. You're creating a lot of debt for the future as well by remaining on an analog workflow of paper. So the avoidance of going digital is really costly and inefficient for customers. And then when we think about digital transformation, the survey of IT execs said only 8% of them feel they've achieved this, they've actually gotten there. So given that most companies have this top-down approach to it, it really hasn't been ultimately successful. It seems like this never-ending goal, and it's not viable. So given that, I think it's worth thinking about what drives a lot of these companies that have this limited view of digital transformation. And they're often looking at the bottom line. They're looking at the stock price. They're looking at revenue in the abstract. And therefore, there's no connection to what it means for everybody else in the organization on the ground floor. People who actually are doing the bulk of the work in the organization don't feel any connection to some bigger purpose or to some bigger change that's happening in the company. And with that disconnect, you're not going to see profound change in an organization. So since digital transformation has been around, it's worth thinking about what drives the companies that have this as a goal for themselves. So generally speaking, it's to reduce costs and improve operational business, which makes sense, and to innovate. Yet we're not seeing the results of that. Generally speaking, we're seeing very limited impact of digital transformation. When you go talk to a CIO, their view is through the lens of one particular objective per year or one specific line item on their goal sheet. So our approach is a bit different, and what I want to talk is a different approach to it. What I mean by bottoms-up digital transformation is the idea of empowering every employee with the tools and capabilities they need to work digitally. And it's not in opposition to typical digital transformation, but it's a complementary approach. It's something that if you imagine empowering 10,000 employees at a business, improving their life, saving them 1 hour a week, saving them 5 hours a week, is going to scale much, much faster than anything that the CIO is going to do top down or any IT-driven project typically. So that's the general idea. To give a more concrete example, I have a question for you. When is the last time you printed a form, signed it with paper, took a picture of it or scanned it back in, and then emailed that to somebody? It's fairly familiar workflow. I would argue many of us do it on a regular basis, but you probably agree it seems wasteful. It seems inefficient. And when you think about it, of course it is. You're taking this digital workflow and then you print it out. You have to go to a physical paper. You have to take a backward step. And then you want to get it back into digital form again to pass it on to the next person or to move it forward. Then you have to get rid of the paper, hopefully recycle it or destroy it if it's confidential. So this is a really wasteful activity, but we do it all the time. I highlight it because it's so common. And our study, it can typically cost maybe 20 minutes, depending on the complexity of the form. For some companies that are real document factories, think of an insurance company, think of a bank, think of companies where they're driven by paper. And paper is where decisions get made, is how you get sign off on something, is where contracts are all paper-based. This is massively expensive and wasteful. This is an example of how by not giving employees the tools to do their job, you're incurring this cost and this waste again and again. This is just one example. So to dive into the document space, which is where I'm from with Nitro, to give a kind of further example, if you think about the fact that email attachments we all get, 70% of them happen to be PDF. Yet only 10% of us have an application that is more than a PDF reader. So most of you get a PDF application or a PDF in your attachment. You can read it, you can print it, and that's pretty much it. You can't really edit it, you can't do much more than that. If this was the case with PowerPoint files, that you couldn't actually open them and be effective with it, you probably would question that and say this is a bit strange. But we don't question PDF, even though it's the de facto document format of business. Similarly, for only 15% of employees generally have access to e-signing tools. So again, difficult to move away from that workflow of a digital workflow. I'll print out the paper and then I'll put it back into email format again without this. So, and that's highly costly. So that's our view at Nitro. That's how we see things, and that's the message we will be giving to our customers. But beyond that, and beyond ourselves, giving modern tools to employees is a game changer. It's what employees expect. They will expect a workplace where they have cutting edge tooling, where they have access to the tooling they need to get their job done. And having the right tools is going to drive productivity, which is going to drive employee engagement. And it's as simple as that. It really means that if you have employees that are well equipped to do their job, they don't have to ask somebody down the hall who's got the one license to do of the application to help them out for an hour because they don't have Photoshop. They've got the tools they need to do their job. They're going to be more effective. They're going to feel more engaged. They don't have to worry about this type of thing. And this is the gap that we see in many companies that don't. They try to maybe save some money in this way, or they just don't think about that opportunity. So if we zoom out a little bit and we think about the global opportunity for bottoms-up digital transformation, so what are the other ways that digital transformation can be an opportunity for everybody from a global point of view? One place I like to start thinking about is the BRICS economy, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So the emerging national economies that are growing fastest. They're going to be some of the biggest players in the world stage in the next 10, 20 years. If you think about where they sit today on this league table of information and communication technology development, so they're from 45, 66, 80, 92, 134. It's worth watching what happens to them. It's worth watching, what are the trends that are going to impact these countries, because this is where your next customers are going to be. This is where your next employees are going to be. And if you're not ready for that or preparing for that, your competitors will be, or your employees will not be ready to join your company. So some of the trends that are likely to play a part in this, you need to think about the government-sponsored digital initiatives that are happening in these countries. These countries are where they often want to leapfrog up to the table. So they're going to make some bigger changes than we might see in some of the Western or more developed economies, because they want to get up there faster. They're going to invest in changes faster than that. Cashless payment. So India are making a big push for cashless payment. And when you think about that, it's worth wondering, well, what will that do for business in India? What will that do for a consumer and end user in their interaction with e-commerce if it's all cashless? Their expectations are going to change. They're going to expect that your business will interact with that in a similar fashion, and it opens new opportunities for selling into them or for what the workforce in that country is going to expect. Similarly, digital ID. Brazil, for example, have got a big initiative around digital ID. And that's a type of profound change in a society, really. Think if your ID is digital, all your government services are digitally delivered, your expectation is that everything you do in your life should follow that way. I mean, because it's rare that government would lead the way. So surely if government is digital, everything else I consume should be digital. And are you ready for that? Or are your competitors ready for that? If you have employees there, they're going to expect that to be seamless between different services, between different companies. There's a lot of other areas that are worth looking into in terms of digital upskilling. If we're going to have new customers in these markets or new employees, are they going to consume your content the same way? Or do you need to make sure it's tailor-made for their country and for their situation, and for their legislation perhaps? And the investment in communication is going to mean this is where new markets are ready for us to pounce on and to participate in. So in terms of bottoms-up digital transformation, it's about thinking of the end user in each of these cases, thinking about the individual, thinking about the person in these situations, and what can we do to make them more effective, more productive, more efficient, which is going to be a sea change from just some top-down initiative. Another example I think is very useful is around Mozilla and their effort a couple of years ago to drive a massive localization initiative. So they have 184 language teams now, all self-organized around the world. How they did it was providing the tools to individuals all around the world to take control of their language and to decide, I want to localize this for me, for my culture, for the people in my region. And they gave them the tools. They realized they're dealing with people with different skill sets, different economies, different languages. And they said, here's how you can self-organize. Here's how you can achieve it yourself. You can just imagine if this was a top-down driven organization where they had one person trying to run this. It would probably take 10 or 20 years. It would be half as effective. But it's a great example of what you can achieve by empowering people with the right technology and tools and a good mission to see it through. You'll often hear trends in digital transformation, and they're very common. A lot of different articles will find them differently. The difficulty with them is that it's hard to know what does it really mean and why is it important for me, these trends. So what I've tried to do is pick out some of the ones that I think are interesting and take an approach of how it is relevant for the bottoms-up approach. And what I mean by that is how for each of these can you make an impact on the individual. So we think about the well-known trend of moving from data to analytics to machine learning to AI. So it's going to become routine for all of us. We will work with systems that are AI driven, and that a lot of our job will be done by AI, then we have to work on top of that. I like to think about the interface between the AI and then the human. So how will I interact with that? What does that really mean for me? And if we're making new products or services, are we helping people prepare for that? Are we going to make that a seamless interface so that the work I do fits seamlessly with the AI running underneath it? Bring your own device is a trend that was in vogue a couple of years ago, but it's not gone away. It's still growing, still increasing. And this is a key one for employee engagement. If you think about what the expectations are in a new employee now or in 5 years' time, they're not just going to want to do their work on a standard issue laptop. They want to do their work where they're most effective, wherever that might be, on their device, in a different place, remotely, or in the office. So if you're not ready for that for your own workforce, or if you're not serving that up within your product for your customers, you're going to be left behind, and the new consumers and the new workforce is simply going to expect that. Digital ops is all around having a mindset of constant change when you're dealing with IT and service delivery. And so, again, if you're not anticipating large enterprises have this digital first approach and expect change all the time and want this dynamic change, then you will be left behind by others that are taking this digital ops first approach. This is one of the growing trends. I'm pretty sure we've all heard way too much about GDPR, so I hesitate to talk about it. But it's interesting to think about what it means in terms of global trends for privacy and for the demands for privacy. We do all get these annoying pop-ups around cookies, and that's become a bit of a tax when you're on the internet. But it's interesting to think there's 1,000 news sites in the US that are effectively blocking European visitors because they chose not to be GDPR compliant. So that was a choice, but it's also an opportunity for other customers or for other news sites. They said, well, actually, we're going to serve a global market and we're going to leap ahead and be ready for this new privacy-first approach. And so ultimately, it remains to be seen, but there's a lot of people predict that's a tipping point. We'll see more of this legislation come in. So if you're ready for that, you're going to be ahead of the game. So with all these things, digital transformation, it's not a destination, it's really a journey. And we see companies go from basic awareness up to maturity in a couple of years if they make these right investments and if they decide where they want to invest. For me, though, it's about the measurement of that. So typically, measurement of these initiatives are at the board level. So it's what does it do to my bottom line? What is the specific percentage improvement in efficiency of my employees this week or this year? But it's more than that. And if you find the right measure that's going to impact individuals, then you can really be much more impactful and effective and engage your whole workforce in that. So what can you do? Whether you're providing a service or a product, or whether you're within a company that has this challenge in front of them, you can give them the map. Nobody has got this figured out. 8% of companies think they have achieved a digital transformation, so nobody's got it right. Nobody's got there yet. So they're all looking for ways to achieve it. They're all looking for a better path to achieve it. So if you can draw the map for them, if you can put some examples in front of them to how they can get towards it, you're going to be valuable. If you can talk about how having a global mindset when it comes to content is important, global being serving everybody in your organization, serving everybody in your customer base, then you're going to prepare for the world where it becomes flatter. You've got people consuming your content all around. Having universal global tooling. So tools that are built for experts are going to be limited in their appeal, limited in their scope. But if your tooling and your applications are available for anybody to consume, you don't have an expectation of a certain skill set or a certain education level in consuming them, then you're going to be future-proofed. And you're going to be ready for new people coming along, new economies and new industries coming along to use your services. And for me, the most important one is around empowering every employee. For us, that's what digital transformation from the bottoms-up approach means. Not this top-down approach, but if every employee feels that they can do their job effectively and better, then they're going to be more engaged, they're going to stay with you longer, and they're going to do a better job. That's me. Thank you for your time today, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. First of all, yes, indeed, I did have to scan my signature last week and upload it into a portal, and I really did ask myself, can this be true? But yes, we're all still doing it. And one of my questions for you was about employee engagement and making them more efficient and motivated by providing them with the right tooling. Obviously, getting rid of that digital, implementing digital signatures, yes. The other thing you mentioned was bringing your own device. What, in your opinion, are the other areas of tooling that you need to be providing employees with now? Is it on the communication side? Obviously, for developers, they need the right tools. But on a generic kind of a level, what kind of tooling are you seeing that really is a minimum requirement?
It really varies by industry.
Yeah.
I think there's two ways to look at it. One is your employees will probably tell you what they need. So if you listen to your employees and say, what did you use at your last job? What are we not using here? And there might be one or two vocal employees that will say, well, I need it for my business, for my work. Please buy it for me. And they don't think about everybody else. So thinking about what are the things that you've bought for 10% of your employee base, but actually maybe would be beneficial to everybody. That's one way to do it. The other way is, where are the gaps today? Have you got communication gaps in your company? Have you got collaboration gaps? I think, well, maybe they can be solved by having some broad approach to it. We often see that different departments might solve them differently. So it might be a marketing department that said, well, we're going to invest in a really good collaboration solution because that's important for us. Not thinking, well, it's important for the whole company, so maybe that should be a company-wide solution. Equally, the engineering department might invest in something that's really, really great for file sharing, not realizing that the whole company might need to do that, so why don't we have a global approach to that? So I would look for areas where there's a department by department approach that could be self-limiting ultimately.